Hello, once again, I'm Doc Rodden, and this is Horror News Radio, the official Gruesome Magazine podcast. Back with me again this week are the scariest, goriest, bloodiest co-hosts on the net. And tonight we are reviewing Train to Busan presents Peninsula. Yes, out now on VOD. Joining me tonight is award-winning filmmaker Christopher G. Moore. Christopher, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm glad I didn't drive after watching this movie because I probably would have run some people over.
Yes, you know, there's a lot of drifting in this movie. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Like when did Mario start driving around in the zombie?
The Fast and the Zombiest is what it is.
Oh my gosh, the Dead and the Dead and the Furious. Let's go with that.
Yeah, the
Dead and the Furious.
That's right. we need to trademark that so we can.
I know. Oh, we do. Oh my God. Okay, you heard it here first. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about. We're going to give our first impressions of the movie Peninsula. Then we're going to talk about a little bit, and then we're going to wrap things up with our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. And there are a lot of scenes to choose from in this particular movie. Now, of course, this is the sequel to Train to Busan, so much so that in the States it's called Train to Busan Presents Peninsula. It takes place 4 years after the original and is an entirely different picture. But we love the first one. I think you caught onto it rather late just by circumstance, but the rest of the crew put it high on their list for that year. I know it was my favorite movie of the year, and it is one of the best zombie movies of the past couple of decades. I believe you think so too. Now you've seen it, right?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's I think like a lot of people were kind of burned out on the zombie genre in general. So going into it, I wasn't sure what to think, but after watching it, it's a really brilliant thing because a lot of it's about the characters, the class system, and you feel for the characters. And so, it's such an interesting story. So it's kind of interesting to sort of go back into that world now in this new film, which is more, instead of Train to Busan, it's more Car to Incheon.
Oh, wow. I like that. Race to Incheon. And we also did Soul Station, which is an animated prequel to Train to Busan. And I might be bold enough to say that this has more in common with that film than it does Train to Busan in its tone and structure.
Sort of. Although I wasn't a big fan of the animated one. It was kind of boring to me and was more. It became more about politics, and that's like the prequels. Is like if you start adding politics, it kind of sucks the energy out of the entertainment value.
Yes. Why do zombies go to the Senate? All right, that's a different story. All right, let's. What are we going to talk about? We're talking about Peninsula. Let's look at the card. All right, Train to Busan presents Peninsula 2020. This is from Well Go USA. It is available now, and it will be coming to Shudder soon, probably around the first of the year or so. So look for it then. I would imagine we'll revisit it at that point. The synopsis is: a zombie virus has, in the last 4 years, spread to all of South Korea. 4 Koreans in Hong Kong sail through the blockade to Incheon for $2 million US cash that's sitting on a truck. Yes, they basically left everything there. And I guess the Hong Kong mob is after trying to get the money out of there. With all those zombies in there. It is directed by Sang-ho Young. Of course, that's the director of the first one. It's written by him and Yong-Jae. And the cast includes Dong Won-gang, which I'm probably mispronouncing all these, and I apologize in advance, ahead of time, all that good stuff. Jung-Hyun Lee and Lee. And the tagline is simple: 4 years later. Well, yeah, I mean, that's about what it is. And that's what we pick up. And as we alluded to, this film is very different. It is much more a heist film or a rescue film. I think we compared it to films like not Back to the Future, Escape from New York. Why did Back to the Future come to my head? Escape from New York, Mad Max,
and a little bit of Baby Driver thrown in.
A little bit of Baby Driver, yeah. And a lot of interesting stuff. We'll probably reference those movies again and again and again as we go through it. But what we're going to do now is give our first impressions after I have rambled on for the past 20 minutes. Thank you. All right, Christopher, you're up first. What was your first impression of Peninsula?
Well, Peninsula, aka Escape from Korea, aka Mad Max Beyond Thunderdead, aka Zombie Driver. Yeah, I mean, this film is definitely more. I mean, granted, the first one did have a lot of good amount of action in it, but this one like takes it to the nth degree. I mean, you have a little kid driving a car and drifting and being all fast and furious with it, but still in a cool way. That kind of made me wish that Baby Driver, the Edgar Wright took Baby Driver and brought it into the zombie apocalypse, which is basically is. But yeah, it's a really interesting film that you know, I think with Train to Busan, it was much more of a contemporary type thing. You just have the zombie stuff happening, and then you have this thing which is 4 years later, which I'm kind of wondering how these zombies are still moving around. I don't know how the starvation effect happens or deterioration happens, but it's movies, so they have their own way of doing things. But yeah, I loved the world. I mean, it definitely has that Mad Max aspect of it, where you have like cars that are made up a certain way, and they're having to deal with. I love how they use things like remote control cars, and there's even one of those light bulletin board trucks or whatever. That, I mean, there's other things that they utilize to their advantage, and just how they sort of. They also bring the heart into it, because you have that beginning scene where it sort of puts you in a situation. If a zombie apocalypse happens or whatever, what would you do? Would you be willing to help other people, and how that might, and then also the loss of people that are close to you and that kind of thing. But yeah, I love the action aspects of it, because I was like, I mean, the first movie made me very anxious just watching it, because when you have these hordes of people that are coming at you, and if you either can't make a lot of noise, or you can't be, you know, they're kind of blind in the darkness. You know, what happens if you're seeing the light? How do you deal with that? But you have this main guy who's basically the John Wick,
yes,
of the dead world, and you know, and he's doing all of his antics, and so you have all these people that are. Yeah, it has like the zombie. You have the John Wick zombie version and the Baby Driver zombie version, and they have all these things, which adds this extra amount of action. And there's like a really cool chase scene that happens towards the end that's really awesome, to where you're like, oh my God, how are they going to get out of this situation? So yeah, I enjoyed it, and there's a lot of interesting characters. And it has a heart to it. I mean, I will admit, though, there was a few scenes that I got really pissed, where I was yelling at the screen.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it was mainly because you deal with these zombies that aren't really like, they're not like the old school slow zombies. They're running for you. So I think the last thing you want to do is be all emotional and just take your time hugging people, or, you know, or being, you know, I'm sorry. I was like, I feel like there was like probably 2 or 3 times where the movie could have ended, because the zombies would have killed them.
They just swarmed them,
and they put it in slow motion. So then, like, I'm like, move, 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 move. I was doing that, and I was like, my parents were in my house, and I was worried I was going to wake them up, because I was yelling at my screen, because I was getting so mad. I was like, just move.
That's hilarious.
So yeah, I mean, you know, but yeah, I think this is definitely more Hollywood action style, or not even Hollywood. I mean, even Hong Kong action style, which there's parts that take place in Hong Kong. So it, you know, there's definitely things with gravity and you know, physics. It doesn't necessarily. I think that when you have a town that's pretty much destroyed, and I was like stressing out, because there's a part where they're driving with like night vision goggles on, and I'm like, oh, I how are you? It's bad enough you're having to figure out ways to get around things at the last minute, but also, yeah. So it's definitely a stress inducer. You might want to take a Xanax or something before you watch it, because it can get very stressful. But yeah, I love the action stuff, and you know, and you can definitely see the inspiration. You can definitely, I mean, that there's a whole Thunderdome part that's really cool.
I didn't even think about Thunderdome.
Yeah, it's like basically Thunderdome, you know,
like the wrestling scene from
from
New York is what I was thinking. But yeah, you're right.
Although one cringy part, there's like a part for the very beginning where they have some talk show where they're talking about it, and they have this guy who's so horrible.
Oh yeah,
and I hate, like, I'm one of those people. I hate like news reporters. I hate talk shows where it's meant to be like a real thing and it comes off fake.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny how like the American actors come off bad.
Is it funny? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't know. To me, I was like, oh God. I was actually kind of worrying in the very beginning. I was like, oh God, I hope the rest of this movie isn't badly acted as these people in this. And it was so like expository, you know, because I think if you go back to like Shaun of the Dead with Edgar Wright, how they explain things through like flipping the channel, it tells more. But this one, where they just keep going back to that, I was like, do we really need that to explain everything?
It almost felt like it was an afterthought. You know,
yeah,
like people wouldn't get it, and they shoved it in place, and it didn't gel with everything else.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you have to treat your audiences a little bit smarter than that. You know, I don't know if it's mainly them trying to sell it to more of an American audience or something, because there are a few places where there's people speaking in English going back and forth. But that kind of turned me off to where I was kind of worried. But I think once we got into the normal stuff, it got better. And some of the action scenes are really well done. There's like one moment. I mean, it's to where there's certain things that, like, I love how you see a specific thing, and then later on you realize, oh, that's the reason they showed that.
Yeah, no kidding. They do that a lot here.
Yeah, so yeah, I enjoyed it. You know, it definitely made me anxious, and it definitely made me mad at characters. But at the same time, I think it's a very enjoyable film that, at the same time, it also goes, without spoiling anything, it goes in a better direction.
A better direction?
Well,
then what? What?
It could have went in a darker direction. I don't, let me just shut up. I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it. I was expecting it to go in a really dark, really darker direction, as opposed to a happier.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at the first movie, it didn't exactly end on a warm, happy note. I mean, it kind of did, but not really, right?
Well, not really, but in this one, it almost like it goes back and changes it up, which I liked.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of it just going, oh great, we're going to the normal thing where somebody has to sacrifice themselves, blah blah blah, and it goes in a different direction. But at the same time, I'm like, how are they getting out of this situation?
Yeah. That one scene with the walkway that you're talking about, man, that was insane.
And it's still like creepy scene.
Yeah, and there you talk about the night vision reveal of that.
Oh,
there's some really good shots there. There's plenty of scenes to choose your best, your most favorite scene for this one from in this film. So that's for sure. Now I have to admit that I watched this movie twice. I watched it twice because when I watched it the first time, I didn't really like it. I was like, and it was more because it's so jarring, right? It's so jarringly different than the first one, and the first one is crafted so well, right? It is the characters start off one way and they change as they go, and in a very positive way. And it has, you know, very inventive scenarios, and but in a not too far-fetched scenario as far as the location, the scenery, and when this is happening. It's more, life is things that we recognize in real life are there, where this film is 4 years after, so it's very much more in the Walking Dead kind of scenario, or some of the later George Romero films that as they start getting weaker and weaker. Sorry, folks who like remember after the first three. It threw me for a loop the first time around, but at the same time, the things that you're mentioning, I really liked. Like, I really liked the chase scenes. I really liked, some of the innovation that they did with putting the way they played with how the lore of it. Like, for example, the zombies aren't really all that active at night, and then when they see light, even at night, they react to it. Right? They react to noise and they react to light, and they use that, and you get the idea. And this was the thing I think I liked the best about it. You get the idea that the people that are still in South Korea that did not get to escape have, in the 4 years, learned how to live in these environments and learned how to drive around, like if they're driving Mario Karts, zooming around sideways and stuff, and, tricking learning how to maneuver the zombies in a certain way. If they needed to, or even using them for their entertainment, which we've seen before. That is not exactly new, but yeah. Although there was a kind of like a zombie ball thing that was kind of scary and frightening.
Yeah, it's like where they hooked all of them together and they're just one big mass, like a crab.
Yeah, it was unreal. And it does have a couple of. It's not a scary film, but there are a couple of jarring scenes. There's a boat scene early on when, which is happening early in the lore of this universe, right? When not the 4 years later, it's kind of leading up to that storyline and on the boat, and it's scary and kind of interesting because of the way the zombies react and wake up, if you will. And they use some acrobatics to a great extent to communicate how these zombies move and stuff. And really fascinating and heartbreaking, and sets it up pretty well. And gives our characters that we do follow some groundwork to work with. Although that's kind of what I didn't like as much, because I don't know if I feel like these characters, especially our lead character, really grew all that much. He wasn't necessarily the, like in the first film. I'm going further than my first impression, right? So my first impression was I didn't like didn't like it on first watch, but I liked it enough that I wanted to watch it again. And when I watched it again, it actually improved quite a bit for me. And now I actually really, really like it. Because I see it for what it is. Like you said, it's more like Escape from New York or Escape from Busan in this case or something. I think Peninsula is a weird name, but I get it in context of the story, because basically the entire peninsula of South Korea has been cordoned off, and they were able to contain this to just the peninsula, which we know probably would never successfully happen given our current world after this movie was actually made.
Yeah.
Might have said, well, we got that wrong, but let's go with it. So I want to stop there, and then I want to get into some of the specifics and things that worked and didn't work and all of that. But I mean, what do you think happened to me, Chris? Why do you think is there something I'm missing about why I reacted so poorly for the first watch? Was it just the comparison?
I think doing any kind of comparison isn't going to be fair, I think, in some ways, because Train to Busan is such a well-crafted individual project, that I think this one they're trying to do something different, which I appreciate, because I think if they just did it, and if they did it the same type of thing, then I think people would compare it even more. Yeah,
they were kind of stuck, right? It was damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if you stuck too close to the original, people would, it's the same movie again, which we've heard that a lot, right? But if you go too far, you get kind of my reaction where, oh, that ain't the same. That's not the movie I wanted. So there's a balance in there somewhere. I think they stepped just a little further, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, like you said. Right? If you can distance yourself from the first one in that respect, I think you're really going to get a lot out of this.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other one is such a contained thing because it takes place within a certain transportation system, I guess is a better way to say it.
A mobile location.
Yeah, and in this one you have them going different places. You have, I know that we always compare it to The Walking Dead, but you have those survivors who created their own sort of weird ecosystem away from everything, and you have like the families sort of create their own thing away from stuff. So I think that's kind of interesting in its own way, and I think this one, I think the first one, I think felt more, even though we're dealing with zombies, it felt more grounded, and this one is less grounded. It's definitely more, it's more John Woo-ish. It's more, I mean, it's definitely very John Wick, and I think
that's true.
I think if you think about it, the main character is sort of like John Wick, except I think we believe John Wick's, turning the way he does as compared to this guy, who sort of feels bad about the death of a family member. And then later on, he's kind of affected again, but to me, I was like, why, why is he acting more affected by that?
I don't know.
I guess maybe because it was the person that he saved. So yeah, I think there's some of that, but I think you can also see that, I think when he sort of meets what he considers his biggest sin of like turning away people later on, and he's sort of that conflicts with his mind, I think you can sort of see that. But yeah, I think it's a little bit different. I think the storyline is much more, I guess, heartfelt in the first one as opposed to this one.
Yes.
And this one it's more simplistic in its approach, and it's almost like more about the spectacle than it is about the characters to some degree.
I agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, you have those kind of interesting characters in the weird encampment, but then you don't really like any of those people. There's not really anybody you could like at all. They're just all different versions of jerks. But I mean, you do care about the family. I think that's the main thing.
That helps. That's
the main thing, because you want them to get out of it to where I'm like, I mean, there's even one moment later I was like, I thought something wasn't happening. It didn't happen. It's like, oh, great. And then something else happened. I was like, oh, I hope they're going to be okay, type thing. Because there's one guy who's a real jerk, but God, I keep wanting to say stuff that'll give away.
I know.
But anyway, yeah. But I do like that there is a little bit of comeuppance on certain characters at a certain point.
Definitely.
That you don't like, so you're kind of cheering because they're causing such harm, because you really want these people, you really want this family unit to escape. You really want them to escape. And I think that's the important thing. And I think that's why you're cheering for them in that whole long escape sequence, which is very, very Zombie Fury Road esque, where they're having to drive around all these different things. And I just love the ingenuity of that, the young girl driver.
Oh, that because
there's like, how she uses their own things they're using against them, like lights and stuff. And there's one part where she like reverses a car and drives backwards and shines the lights on them, so the zombies I mean, it's like, oh, I was like, there's parts that made me cheer for the actions, because I'm like, I don't know how they're getting out of this, because they're having to drive at night. There's no telling when there's like what I think there's one point where they call it a march of zombies, where there's like a whole group of zombies moving and stuff. And then, but there's that one guy who's really adept with his weapon and stuff. And so yeah, it has all those things that from different, it's weird how it has all these different things from different films that we enjoy, and sort of mishmashes it together, which makes it more entertaining. But I think compared to the first, it's a little bit, it has less of the, I want to say less of the heart, but it has less of that spine that made the first one like so much more impactful.
Right. Well, I think what really worked in the first one is you had all these, it was more of a class struggle instead of a, and you know, everybody banded together, even though you had some betrayal, and in that basically was how are these disparate groups going to get together and survive this. And so that had a little bit more of a unity to do it. And this is, you know, 3 different groups, and, you know, are they going to join? Are they not? You know, are they going to, you know, even to the part where, you know, this group that we're talking about, that they're trying to, yeah. So basically there's like this compound that has risen, you know, to survive. And like many horror movies, we're dealing with zombies in the apocalypse, they start to become kind of like Negan, right? They kind of start becoming the bad guy and ruling under a certain kind of thumb. And this, it's kind of weird because it's well, I'm not going to get too far into it, but there are more than one character, and that makes it shine a little bit because you really want all of them to get their comeuppance. But so it's really those against each other with all the zombies running around, and that's different than the first one, but I don't know if it's more interesting than the first one.
Well, it's more everyone for themselves, I guess. And I think you have those people that are in their own little, you know, area or whatever, and but a lot of them really don't have. I don't know. They really don't stand out a lot, I guess, because even the person who's like the leader really isn't that great of a leader.
No.
You know what I mean? And you have the other people who are just jerks to everybody. And so it's kind of a weird thing. I mean, but I, you know, I think there's elements that are still kind of interesting. I did like the aspect that, you know, when that guy was on the boat to Hong Kong, and how those people that came for Korea, they're in the same way that certain countries or even our country look at some foreigners and have these horrible thoughts about them, you know, like in this one, they're thinking like, oh, you brought the virus here, in the same way, like America, some idiots are like, oh, the Chinese brought the virus here, you know? So it's kind of interesting how they play with that aspect of it, to where, you know, another Asian culture is being racist against another Asian culture because they think that you know, they don't bring it to our, you know, we don't want you here type thing. So I think that you do have that aspect of it, to where they don't really have much to lose. And so if there's a way to sort of make some money and be able to get above that, you know, by having more money, in the same way the class system was an aspect of the first.
Yeah. The refugees, the South Korean refugees in Hong Kong is not a very promising outcome for, you know, those people that escaped. They're not necessarily better off. As a matter of fact, the people that are the most better off is that small core family that we get introduced to. And that even becomes one of the points of the film, is, you know, how they treat each other makes everything better than all these other scenarios that we encounter here. So there's a lot going for it. Most of the positives come with the action. Anytime they're chasing and racing around, it's exhilarating. It's fun, incredibly well done. I mean, it's not quite Fury Road in the respect of how that was handled, but it is approaching that, I think, very, very closely. I wouldn't mind a double feature with those two movies, although I might be exhausted when they were done. because of the energy. There's a lot of chaotic energy in these chasings, but they are some of the best chasings.
Well, yeah, and I think the only issue might be because a lot of it takes place at night, and so there's parts where it can get kind of dark in certain scenes and stuff when you're trying to like pay attention.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does. There's some really intense, cool action sequences. I mean, granted, there is a little bit more CGI because of that, so just no going into that. But
right, and that's I think the biggest difference between those two films I mentioned is that, you know, there's very little, or at least.
Well, I mean, the ending of the first was very CGI, but
yeah. But I mean, no, I mean with Fury Road, like Fury Road.
Oh, Fury Road,
had a lot of practical, even though there were CGI effects in there.
Well, it was more,
but they accented instead of
added to it, as opposed to totally being, you know, CGI. But yeah, I think the action editing and the action scenes are really well done. It's really intense. Much, yeah. Because you got to make sure that stuff flows, and so, there's several. I mean, I think it'll be interesting because there's that new Zack Snyder film that's coming out, which is supposed to be a heist film during
we'll see how that works out.
So we'll see if that even measures up. But I think taking like a normal car chase or chase scene and putting it in a zombie world, it added so much more to the craziness of that and the entertainment value. So that last, I don't know, the last bit, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, however much, that's some powerful stuff to where you're like, I think if we were lucky enough to see that in the theater, I think I'd be holding on to the armchair. But yeah, it's really well done. I mean, that if there's anything that's the biggest strength is some of the action sequences, and but yeah, I mean, but even so, I mean, even the stuff with like the Thunderdome thing was really cool, interesting.
Yeah,
they dealt with that.
Yeah, and they handled it too. Handled it really well with the character that's involved with that, because he doesn't know what's going on, and we don't know what's going on, but the people around do, and they're kind of yelling at him, telling him, hey, you better get to that door; it's going to close soon.
I was yelling at him too. That's another part I was yelling at. I was like, "Get your ass inside there, dude! Stop freaking out. Get in there if you want to live."
You would freak out though if you were in that.
I would, but I think I'd also, if I see other people moving, I'm gonna go. But I don't know.
Paint a number on them. You start bidding all your canned goods on them. It's like, hey, I guess we always need entertainment, right? All right.
Yeah. To the detriment of other human beings.
Oh, like we've never done that before. All right, so let's wrap this up. What we're going to do now is give our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. But before we do, if you're listening this long and watching, thank you so much. Also, hit the subscribe button, and that'll help others find us. So like or dislike even will help others find us as well. If you want to be reminded about more, smash that bell. That's what they say, smash the bell, and you'll get reminded. Smash the bell. And then leave us some comments. Did you get to see this? What did you think? Are you looking forward to it? Did you enjoy the first one? All that kind of stuff. I want to know. I hope you get to see. The only sad thing before we get into this is that we didn't get to see this in the theater this year, and they were promising IMAX and everything with it, and what a missed opportunity! What a missed opportunity of that, because this would have looked spectacular on a big screen. All right, Chris, you're up first. Give me your final thoughts, your score, and your favorite scene.
Yeah, I think it's an enjoyable film. I think you just have to go into it knowing that it's almost taking the story elements from the first and putting it around a different genre. It's more action oriented. It's more like extreme action oriented.
Extreme.
Yeah, this is more Fast and the Furious than George Romero's Walking Dead. So.
George Romero's Walking Dead.
I mean,
that would have been
George
cool.
Romero's Night of the Living Dead. Sorry, or it's less Walking Dead, I would say. Although it has some of those elements, but it's definitely a mishmash of so many different things. It's like, let me do another food analogy like I normally do. It's like taking all the elements of Thanksgiving dinner and blending them together. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think it does work in this. Respect.
Zombie smoothie. Oh my god!
It's a big zombie smoothie. Goes down smooth. And probably green. But yeah, it's an enjoyable film, and it's got some really wonderful action sequences, especially the car stuff. I mean, I loved every time that little girl was in the car.
Yes,
I was like, because she was like saving people's lives left and right.
What was she like? 10? She was like 10 driving.
Yeah, it's like I'm lucky if I can. Drive well myself, and so I just see that it's like, wow. But the things you do when you're even the little girl with the little remote control was kind of cool.
Very much so, actually.
But yeah, the action oriented stuff is really cool. I mean, it has a little bit of the elements of the heart from the first, but it definitely veers away from that, but doesn't make it a horrible film. I think it's entertaining. It's definitely. I'd love to see more action-oriented stuff from the director, even if it's not
Yes.
zombie. I'd love to do it. I'd love him to just do a straight action film. I'm not sure if he's done something like that before, but if he used some of the techniques he used in this, I think it would be pretty kick-ass. I mean, it definitely has. There's definitely things that seem to be influenced or has things that remind you of John Wick films, because that the main dude, regardless of if you like him or not, he kicks some ass when he's just going, because there's one part where he's just going through shooting people left and right, killing zombie here, killing a human here, and just using the butt of his gun. He's just using whatever he has to sort of go at people. But yeah, I think the way it ends is kind of good, even though there's a part that just made me so mad at the characters. Like, yeah, just don't. If there's a zombie apocalypse, don't slow down. Get your ass wherever and escape. Don't sit there and pause and hug for what it feels like 20 freaking minutes. And they do it in slow motion, which is. But anyway, that's just an irritation to me. That's like I think if we can hug later, okay. or you can use your emotions later. No time to emote. Time to just get out of there. So if I were to give it a rating, I would give it. I'll give it a 4 out of 5. I guess
solid.
I think there's a few elements that kind of rub me the wrong way, like the talk show element, and
oh, that's bad. That's really bad.
And just other things. Yeah, which I think every time that we got away from like the car chases or the action stuff, I kind of like But once it gets into that, especially full blast, the last 30 minutes or so, it's primo stuff. Chef's kiss. As for favorite scene, like you mentioned previously, there's a lot of scenes you could really pick. It's kind of hard to pick. I'll say the even though I love the last car chase stuff, I'll say that the first time we see that the young girl and her car driving actress,
yes,
which she tells him to sit in his seat and use his seatbelt, but he doesn't, and he ends up paying for it. But I think once we learn her abilities and stuff, to where she uses uses the brake and uses all these different things to slide into zombies and turn the car and drive backwards and stuff. She's so badass with the car. I mean, it definitely reminded me a lot of Baby Driver, which I loved. It's one of my favorite films of that year that it came out. So I think those are just so well done. The car stuff, any of the vehicle stuff in this film has elements that are on some level of Fury Road, I would say. So I'll have to pick that, even though I'd love to pick the final big action scenario.
Yeah, you can take that whole sequence.
but that'd be kind of cheating, I'd say. But I'll say that, like, the first time we see her abilities, where you're like, oh, this little girl's a badass. She's more badass than the rest of these characters in this movie. Yeah,
because you're definitely wondering, how's our guy going to get out of this? And then poof. They built that up really well too. They led into it without being, we knew that she was already watching them, so having her show up wasn't a big surprise and stuff. And that always kind of can get to be kind of a groan when somebody just comes out of the blue.
Well, we have something.
Come with me if you want to live.
Well, we also have. we have a hint at something, without giving anything away, that happens later as well.
That's true.
Which is a relief, I think, because I think Vanessa sometimes talks about how she likes more happier type endings, and I think I was kind of relieved how it plays out.
The first movie, spoilers, ends on we get
ends on a darker note,
but it isn't a much darker note.
This one, it could have ended much darker, and I was like, oh. Yeah. But then it took him forever. I was like, wait a minute, this is taking so long. Hopefully this is not turning out as dark as what I want it to. Yeah. I'm glad we're talking about this. There are people like, what are they talking about?
I know. I was like, yeah. All right. So for me, it's not much different. Like I said, I'm glad I watched it the second time, because this would have been an entirely different discussion if I just left it on the first watch. I came to it with a different perspective, and with that perspective, I thoroughly enjoyed it as the action film, as the Escape from Busan movie that it is, or in Ichiban, or wherever they are, Escape from the Peninsula. It handles it. You have to get that distance. You have to break that. It's not the same mold, and with that, you're going to enjoy this film a lot more. Our lead is really, really nice. I actually liked him better as our character at the end than I did at the beginning. The beginning, I was like, why do I want to like this guy? But at the end, I did. So that was good. And I liked the family, the mother, the two girls, even though they're not sisters, right? Because one of them's the granddaughter of the guy and the grandpa that's there. And, they in 4 years, they become close knit, and you enjoy that it gives you hope, right? That even in the worst circumstances, people survive. And that, I think we gravitate as an audience, at least my experience is toward that than some of the other aspects. But the chase scenes in this are extraordinary, exhilarating, exciting, chaotic, and well worth watching this alone. I mean, if you dislike the film and other aspects, you will enjoy the chase scenes, the car scenes. They are remarkable, and I recommend it on that alone. I'm going to give it 4.25, just a little bit higher, which I'm surprised because I thought I was going to like it less than you. I really did.
Oh, nice.
And my favorite scene is going to be there's a lot of scenes I could do in the chase scene at the end, and I'm going to choose just one because I liked what they did, just because I thought it was so innovative. And it's going to be a small spoiler, but not really. They're being chased. There is a lot of zombies. You were talking about the
march.
We call them hordes in the States, right? But they're all over the place. And of course, once they get going, they're just running after. I mean, they can, they're all over the place, and some are in front, some are behind, just by circumstance. And the way they get them to stop following them with using fireworks. So basically, they do one of their fancy turns and they shoot these fireworks down this alleyway, and the zombies go after the fireworks. And I thought that was just so cool, and the way the whole family had to work together to make that happen. And then you've got the guys with the truck. I think the heist part of it is the least entertaining.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just it gives them a reason to do that, and the resolution of that is no big surprise either. Although it is oddly satisfying.
Yeah, I think if it had been much more action oriented, how they had to sort of find the truck and stuff, I think, but it's pretty plain. But yeah, it's other things when they're having to escape away from people. That's when it gets much more interesting and fun.
Yeah, so it's a flawed film, but it's still high marks. It's still better than most zombies, if not all zombies we've been getting in the past 5 to 6 years. It's really, really good. Perhaps only surpassed by Train to Busan.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that it seems like the people that are getting it right are outside of this country, especially a lot of the Asian countries. Wait a minute, what was the one we just reviewed recently? Was that Korean as well?
That was Alive. That was South
Alive, and that's another sort of great zombie film that I think they're not doing traditional ways of telling these stories. They're taking a different perspective, taking the story in a different way, and I think that's why they're much more successful with it, and I think we don't really see too many, well, I guess other than like Zombieland, we don't see too many sort of fun actiony zombie type things.
I feel like we're forgetting more than we're remembering. There's
probably people yelling at us like I was yelling at the people that screamed.
Yeah.
Did you forget about this film?
But I think that's the point is, I'm not going to forget Train to Busan. I probably won't forget this one either.
Well, yeah, they're not as memorable. I mean, I remember Zombieland 1 more than I remember Zombieland 2. So
yeah, mostly because of Bill Murray, but that's a different story. All right, our Double Tap. Double Tap has become a lexicon, right? So it gave us that.
Yeah.
All right. With that, that's our review for Peninsula. It is it's out there if you want to rent it. It's not really that expensive. I'd recommend doing it. If not, you can wait until next year. It will be coming to Shudder.
You can buy it on Blu-ray too.
You can get it on Blu-ray from Well Go USA. So thanks to them for us being able to see this. With that, Christopher, thank you for joining me tonight. This was a fun discussion. I can't believe we spent 45 minutes talking about this.
I know. I'm glad that my blood pressure has gone down after watching that film, because that stressed me out. I don't think I would last very long in a zombie apocalypse. After it makes me not want to. Maybe I'm glad I'm staying in my house.
There you go. All right. Well, let's say good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.